Have you ever wondered why there's so many emotional hills and valleys in life? Why it's necessary to learn to surf the waves of life? Like, why can't I just stay in love, joy, and enlightenment? Like, why do I have to go into the fear, guilt, and shame and those lower vibrating emotions? Well, I'm here to answer those questions. I'm Kerry Blaser, reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, the divine feminine. And last year during the second coming in September, I created my 6 divine feminine self-love strategies, and there's a free ebook outlining them below. And this one is number 3, learn to surf the waves of life. So today I'm going to show you, going to rely on a couple experts. We're going to see a physics experiment, and we're going to go over the map of consciousness by Dr. David R. Hawkins. And so let's start there, and we'll see what his work did and how that can teach us why it's so necessary to surf the waves of life, and how when you learn, you just surf more waves higher and faster. That's my life now. I don't get stuck in the fear. I just, to do. Yay me. Let me teach you how to do that, okay? So let's start. Let me share my screen, and I'm going to share my website. There it is. Okay, so here on the left is a copy of Dr. David R. Hawkins' map of consciousness. And what it does is it teaches us that we all have energy bodies or souls. So physicists have proven we have a soul. We know now. And then we have an energy body, and energy is constantly changing. Like, the only constant in life is change. And since we're energy bodies, so our physical bodies are energy too. How do we move through our emotions at different hertz? Like, how does the soul operate? Okay, so let's start at the lowest vibrating emotion. Our souls communicate out through our hearts via our emotions, and our emotions vibrate at different frequencies. So the lowest vibrating emotion is shame at 20 hertz. Then you get up to courage at about 200 hertz. Love is 500 hertz. Joy, peace, and then enlightenment is an emotion, which I only learned a year and a half ago. And I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies, so from UCSB, like I should have known, right? But I didn't. And enlightenment vibrates between 700 and 1,000 hertz. So in order to expand your emotional range and become more emotionally mature, download more wisdom and knowledge, you have to learn how to surf your emotions. You have to learn how to go into your fear, guilt, and shame, and then come out and experience joy, peace, and enlightenment, and then go back to fear, guilt, and shame. But why is all this necessary? Well, I asked myself that question, and then I had to accept that fluctuating energy is a live energy. So if we say, I just want to stay in enlightenment, then you get stuck in enlightenment. I mean, I was stuck in my fear, guilt, and shame for 35 years with debilitating lower back pain. The wounds in my sacrum, in my womb, were like rape wounds, were screaming at me, and I didn't know how to listen because it wasn't time for me to learn my lessons yet. My soul has a plan for me. So here you can come back on my website, and check that out more. But let me, so when we accept that our emotions vibrate at different frequencies, and we have to go through those frequencies and learn how to move through those frequencies, and it helps us process our emotions, okay? So now we're gonna rely on a physics experiment that shows us why learning to surf the waves of life will help fluctuate our energy faster. And the fastest fluctuating energy, like enlightenment, is the most transformative. So if you want to experience enlightenment, you have to get comfortable in those higher and higher vibrating emotions. And that doesn't happen overnight. Physiologically, 10 years ago, I couldn't go from 20 hertz, just jump to 1,000 hertz, right? That's too big of a jump for my body physiologically. I had to start learning to surf. And usually, you learn to surf on the small waves. You don't go to Portugal on the 70-foot wave. Like, you don't learn how to climb mountains by starting at Mount Everest. And I'll equate that with enlightenment. You start on the hill, So I started in those smaller waves, kind of going into my shame a little bit and coming out a little bit and coming in and out a little bit. But let me share this physics experiment to show you how this works, because I just love that there's wisdom and knowledge saying the same thing, because that's how I know it's true. When something's true in multiple places, then, you can count on it. So let me share my screen again. Okay, here we go.
Hello, I'm Roshan, and today in Homemade Science, I want to go back and revisit the high road, low road track. Now, I did a previous video on this, and I had so many questions and comments, I thought it would be worthwhile to go back and do a few more demonstrations on it and take a closer look. Now, this is a classic physics problem where we have two tracks that start at the same position and end at the same position, but their path from one side to the other is completely different. Now, these balls are able to roll down the tracks, so the question is, if I were to release them simultaneously, which track would get the ball to the opposite side the quickest? Well, let's give it a try. So the shortest distance between 2 points is not necessarily the fastest. Now, what's going on here? Well, we're giving both balls potential energy by lifting them up to a certain position. When I release them, only a small amount of its potential energy is changed into kinetic on this track, so its speed across a track isn't very high. However, on the low road track, I started out at that high position. It drops down, changes that potential energy into kinetic, but then it drops an additional distance, so more potential energy is changed to kinetic, so it's going to cover this distance at a higher speed. Now, I've always enjoyed these tracks, so I thought it'd be fun to try some variations in it. So I've made other ones. And in this case, I've added a single hill in the center of the low track, which comes back up to the original height of the high road track. Now let's give this one a try. Let's try it with two humps. A little bit more complex. Let's see what happens with this one.
Let me stop sharing my screen and we'll talk some more. So, as you saw, the downward fueled the upward. The surrender to the fear, guilt, and shame, going down that the map of consciousness into your fear, guilt, and shame, is what fueled that climb. And that's what I didn't understand about life. I was down here, but I didn't know how to transform the wound to wisdom to get the energy. I didn't know how to release the energy, which is like the wisdom or the knowledge. And what I also learned is the feminine surrenders and the masculine acts. And everyone has masculine and feminine inside of them. Women, we should spend about 90% of our day in our right brain, that's the feminine side, to have balanced hormones. And men should spend about 90% of their day in the left side so that they have balanced hormones, okay? So what we need is different, but we both need to be able to go through our emotions and come out of our emotions. And when I just accepted that I needed all of the hills and valleys in my life to teach me how to process my emotions. And some of my other strategies I'll get into a second when I share in my ebook really teach you how to do that. But accepting this wisdom and this knowledge really helped me stop fighting myself about why I would get a high and then go low. Like I remember here's an example, it's in my book. I had to fight my ex-husband. I had to take him to court for child support. And on Friday, I won child support. And the next day was my stepfather's funeral. He was there and it was highly uncomfortable. There was my high and there was my low. But that's my emotions fluctuating, breathing life into my soul, life into my body, life into my life. Okay? So we're here to learn how to surf, not act as if there's no waves, because the waves won't stop, because when energy stops, energy dies. We don't want to die. I don't want to die yet. Okay, so let's look at my ebook and see how that can help you. It's free. It's linked below. I'll share again. And, oh, here it is. Okay, let me go back to the top. So here's my ebook. It's my 6 Divine Feminine Self-Love Strategies. And it's basically, I summarize the wisdom in my book so it's easy to use. And I wanted to give it away for free to help people learn how to self-reflect, learn to accept that we're souls having a human experience. And this really helps you operate your soul. Okay. So there are 6 lessons. The first one is appreciate, learn, and forgive equals ego death. Okay. And there's a whole video on that if you want to check it out. Second one is love hierarchy. I've just made another video on that. And this one, learn to surf the waves of life. And I start with a Winston Churchill quote who said, "It is said that famous men are usually the product of an unhappy childhood." So again, in order to climb, like if I want Mount Everest size wisdom, and I've been to the Mount Everest base camp, I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies. Like, I've been around the block a little bit. So if I want Mount Everest size wisdom, then I had to take on Mount Everest-sized wounds, and that's what these famous men had set themselves up for. If their soul planned a really deep surrender at the beginning of their life to fear, guilt, and shame, like deep fear, guilt, and shame, then there's their opportunity for immense growth and immense wisdom and knowledge. And our souls plan that because our souls are energy bodies, so they plan our lives based on the laws of physics. When I had that epiphany, I was like, oh, I felt so much better. I'm like, I ain't crazy, but this is how life works. And then there's the video. And then here's the map of consciousness. The 4th lesson is the universe is a mirror. And there's a video, physics video, showing you why that's true. And then changing the world is an inside job. Another physics video showing why that's true. And the last lesson is pain is an initiation process to personal growth. And this is a piece of wisdom that I heard from my soul, that pain is beautiful because it reveals what longs to be healed. And I needed 35 years of debilitating lower back pain to learn that lesson. Okay, it wasn't punishment. It was initiation to intense wisdom. For healing purposes. And then I share a video about how I helped Jeffrey Epstein after he passed away. I helped his soul forgive himself and go to heaven. So I hope that these self-love strategies help you learn how to transform your emotional wounds into personal wisdom. And please like and subscribe and check out my other videos if you need more help. But you can contact me via my website. There's a contact form. My email is there as well. All right, take care. Bye.